wanted to share a few reflections on my own experience of return. So I don't know as an artist that I can think about return without also thinking about place. And we've just experienced, in my sense, an experience of placemaking. The opportunity to capture, to document, to bring forward the images of place, the stories, the narratives of place as we've gathered them together through our time here. And I think as an artist, I'm always playing from somewhere. Music's not abstract. It doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes from somewhere. And almost any piece I play has a narrative. It has some storyline that's connected to where the music has come from. And that became apparent to me once when I was came back to Toronto from having been at university for 4 years, majoring in music. Looking for an opportunity as I went on to graduate work to find some opportunity for some place where I might play, and knew that there was a dance theater not far away from where I lived in downtown Toronto. It was based on the Martha Graham School in New York, and so I was curious. I thought maybe I'd go over and see if they might hire me part-time, and so I could at least have a piano that I could play, because I lived in a small apartment with nothing to practice on. I went up these stairs over top of an auto body shop on Cumberland Avenue in downtown Toronto and walked in and saw this marvelous 9-foot concert grand piano and knew I'd found home. Place, I think, also speaks to home, you know, and we feel sort of that we're someplace where we belong, then in a sense we've returned. It's an opening to a new journey, but we've returned for at least a closure, perhaps, of one cycle. And I felt maybe at that moment, just seeing that beautiful piano and the natural light coming in through those floor-to-ceiling windows, that I had come home. And so I said, my name is Michael, I'm looking for work. I was talking to Patricia, who was the director of the school, and I said, I'm doing some graduate work at the university, but I'd like to find some part-time work playing the piano. Would you have some work here? And she said, yes, as a matter of fact, one of our regulars just left for Vancouver. We have an opening tomorrow morning. Amelia's class is in need of a pianist. Could you come by tomorrow morning and let's just try it out? Be curious to see how this might work out for you. And so I went back to my apartment, and as I thought about what I just committed to, I got very nervous. Realized that I didn't know how to play for dance. Didn't quite know what I got myself into. And so I gathered up all the sheet music I could find around my apartment, put it into a box, and the next morning at 9:30, I left the box under my arm, heading off to my first dance class. Walked up the stairs again, settled in, put the box down just beside the piano. And Amelia said, welcome, Michael. It's wonderful to have you here. There were 30 dancers all warming up on the stretch bar. And she said, like to begin with just some improvisational work to warm up. Could you play some music for us, please, that has the feeling of rain in it? That's about what happened. I say rain, and I was thinking back to Beethoven. No, that's not going to Haydn. No, that's not. Realized in all my years at the conservatory, I don't think anybody ever taught me how to play rain. So already there was a limitation. So I started going through the box looking for something like maybe raindrops falling on my head or something that I thought would kind of get the spirit of what she was asking for. She could see I was in some difficulty, so she came over to the piano. It turned out she was also a pianist. She came right up to the piano, sat down right beside me, and just very quickly in the very upper notes kind of played something very light and beautiful. And said, like this, she said, just like this. And then she went back to join the dancers, and I immediately put my fingers in exactly the same notes that she had just played. And I started to do exactly what she had just done, really just trying to imitate something of what she had just shown to me. And as I did that, the dancers started moving out across the floor, doing these marvelous movements like this with the fluttering of hands to kind of give the impression of rain. And I was just, for a moment, just captured by what was beginning to happen around me. I never had an experience before in my life where as I played, others were moving. And they, in fact, through their movements, were beginning to suggest things that I might be able to do with my own hands as I began to move around the piano. It was a marvelous opening because I realized that one composer whose music I love was Chopin. Chopin, for me, was a sense of home because when I entered into the feeling of touch, which was the language of Chopin's music, it really opened up this whole language for me of touch and of the nuance of how I could begin to shape and bend the notes rather than strike them so I could capture the subtle shadings of what it might be like to create this kind of whole sort of sound field of rain. So as I was doing that, the dancers started to open up to even more kind of exploratory movements. And as they were doing that, I began to kind of forget myself and move into these exploratory movements on the piano as well. So I couldn't tell Am I leading? Am I following? You know, it was all sort of happening all at one time. And as I was becoming totally immersed in this and captured by the inspiration and the imagination of the moment, I heard Amelia call out and say, "Now play wind." And in my own mind, I'm saying, I'm just getting good at rain. But yet there was another stretch coming. So she could see once again I was in some difficulty. So she began to demonstrate with her left arm something that conveyed the movement of wind. And as I found that, then I could imagine it just as I was feeling my own body kind of captured in this, because I realized to do what I was doing, I really could not just play for my wrist, which is commonly how you get trained as a pianist. I had to kind of reorient to kind of play for my whole body. So the music was really coming, the sound of it, the sensation was coming from really the center of my back, through my shoulders. And so I took advantage of that to begin to get the movement of what wind might be like in my left hand, creating kind of an ostinato pattern that I thought might capture what she was suggesting. And as I did that, the dancers started doing these marvelous grand movements across the whole floor, great leaps and so on. Well, of course, I just lost myself at that point, totally immersed in what they were doing. And so I was playing all 88 keys, kind of leaping from the bass to the treble and back to the bass and doing these things as they were doing them. And it was just a marvelous moment as this was happening. And then she said, "Now play thunder." And as soon as she said that, something just shifted in me. I realized this is not new. This was not a new experience for me entirely. That I knew this world that she was speaking of and drawing me back into. For many of the formative years of my life, I used to go to a YMCA camp on the northern tip of Bosley Island, which was in the wilderness of central Ontario, the Georgian Bay Wilderness, which was all these wonderful barren rockscapes with jack pines kind of bent to the winds, marvelous interplay of light and water, and wind and rain, and I was just totally captured by that world. That was really where I found, in a sense, I started to play from. Because when I was there in a hot hot July afternoon, when the weather was really muggy and sticky, those were the days that the storms would come. And I already, at some point in the afternoon, often around 3:30 or 4 o'clock, I could actually hear the thunder, not as an auditory experience, but feel the vibration in the rock. It was like I could hear it underfoot before I could feel that underfoot before I could hear it. That was a signal for me. As soon as that sensation came, that first kind of very deep, ominous rumble was kind of sent me down to the camp lodge, where they had this beautiful upright grand piano, and I'd open the screen wide so I could be there for the full unfolding of the storm, and I would sit kind of poised, ready for the storm to come. And as the thunder amplified, then I'd play to the thunder, and then I'd play to the lightning, and I'd play to the rain, and I'd be part of the whole unfoldment of what was happening around me. And so I realized that in a lot of ways, my return to music was also a return to Georgian Bay. At midlife, as I came back to music, when I was trying to find what is it the music that really speaks to me, what is the music that really most inspires and kind of brings me into the center core of my being, it was the music of Georgian Bay, to capture all of the fullness of the impressions of wind and rain and thunder and the interplay of light. It was such a marvelous language to work from, and it was such a marvelous place to play from. And so I think in that sense, the return is never abstract. The return really is, in a sense, coming back to the place that we can think of as being home. And we can't only often return to home. Georgian Bay, if I went there now, is very different than it was then. So home is also, I think, or place is something we not only return to, but grow out from. So we can create other places, perhaps, in the world that we can also return to as a part of that experience. And so Rilke wrote a beautiful poem, I think, that speaks to me about the nature of return. And he says, "This clumsy living that moves lumbering as if in ropes through what is not done," he writes. "This clumsy living that moves lumbering as if in ropes through what is not done reminds us of the awkward way the swan walks. And to die, which is a letting go of the ground we stand on and cling to each day, is like the swan when he nervously lets himself down into the water, which receives him gaily, and which flows joyfully under and after him, wave after wave, while the swan, unmoving and marvelously calm, is pleased to be carried each minute more fully grown, more like a king, composed, farther and farther on." And so to die, which is a letting go of the ground we stand on and cling to every day, is like the swan when he nervously lets himself down into the water, which receives him gaily, and which flows joyfully under and after him, wave after wave, while the swan, unmoving and marvelously calm, is pleased to be carried each minute more fully grown, more like a king, composed, farther and farther on. I thought I'd share some music that was inspired by Georgian Bay, and as I do, you might listen for the wind and for the rain and for the thunder. And you may also imagine for yourself, what is for you Georgian Bay? What is the place that you return to in your imagination or in your memories, the place that for you is home, a place to which you can also return, a place that you can grow out from, the sense that when you do return, there's a place to which you can kind of put your feet in the ground. It feels like home, a place of belonging. For you, as you have a sense of how you, as the word says, we go through these cycles repeatedly, and each return is also a call to a new possibility. So I'll let you imagine, just go to that place in your imaginings as I play, and you may also just listen for the sensations of what's unfolding in the music as I play.